Hello there and welcome to Liz at Home. Thanks for joining me today. It's Watercolor Wednesday and today I'm going to be painting this bird of paradise flower or strelitzia, or my version of it. I'm using my Arteza. It's a small little sketchbook and I've tried to draw the flower. We have one in our garden and I thought I would try and paint it. I'm going to be using my Rowney Aquafine. It's a small little palette that I'm going to be using. There's a mess in there already and I'll just use that up and mix on top of it. I always just do that rather than cleaning it out. So I have my paper towel, I have a little wet wipe, and I have 2 vessels of water, and I'm going to be spritzing my paints quickly. I'm using this Craft size 6 round brush. It's the bamboo set. And then I change brushes a little bit later on. So I wanted to try doing a wet on wet technique first. And I just need to erase some of these lines a bit more even. As you'll see later on, the wet on wet, what I had thought would work, didn't really work for me. So I still semi-used wet on wet, but started with wet on dry and then moved from there. So I'm just wetting the brush and then wetting the paper. And I think I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm just trying to get it nicely wet. I don't know if you can see the slight shine where the water is. And then I'm planning on dropping some paint in there. I just want to point at the end of this leaf. I want to get it evenly wet. Sorry about my arm crossing the screen all the time. I always have my paint on that side and it's not always conducive to making great videos. So I'm going to try just moving things a little bit to the side. So this yellow is called lemon yellow, but it's mixed with all the other colors, so it's not a clear lemon yellow. And I've sort of wanted the yellow in the middle and more orange at the top. I'm always getting myself a little bit muddled up when I start, so I'm going to try and mix some orange in with this kind of browny red that I've got there. This is that reddish color is cadmium red hue. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong glasses on. I can't see all that well. This writing is small. So it's a very bright reddish orange. And now I'm going to go over the lines, and I like the way it's bleeding into each other. But my wetting of the background of this is already dried, so that didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, and I'm trying to get the two to bleed together. But I feel like the end of the petal is not great, but I fix it up later, so don't worry about it too much. And I'm just going to carry on. And I'm just painting. I want this next one to be a darker red. So I'm just generally painting the shapes, sort of doing a bit of an outline and then colouring them in, and then I will use that when it's damp and drop colour into that as well. The petal next to the one on the left I haven't done yet because I want this one on the left to dry first so that I can make clean lines. Oh, this is so much fun. I do love painting with my watercolors. This bit rounder. There we are. And now on to the next bit. Okay, so now I've loaded my brush with some more of the yellow. And I'm going to try painting this one more with the yellow and then dropping in some of the other color while it's wet. So I'm going to go like this and hope that the two blend together nicely. I've got a tiny little stamen thingy, or whatever it's called, that I've got to go carefully around. I'm just a little bit concerned that I'm going to go into it. So I want that to be blue. There we are. Now, I shouldn't have done this, and I realize as I'm doing this that I need uniform wetness, and I put too much water there, and I'm getting a bit of a bloom. As you can see, the pigment is pushing back because there's too much water there now, so I need to go over the whole thing with the same amount of water to kind of try to stop that bloom happening. So many things to think of when you're doing watercolors. All right, now we're going with slightly more orange onto this next one. I really wish I could paint every day, and then I feel like things would improve. I love flowers, and I wanted this to look a bit loose, but I didn't know how to make it loose, so I ended up sort of coloring it in more. I want to try and fix this first petal that I did. There, that's better. I'm just dabbing some of the paint off on my paper towel. Oopsie, there we've got a bit of a bleed happening, which I didn't want right there, but never mind, I managed to save it. And I'm going to try with the yellow while the other is wet and hope that they'll blend nicely into each other. I think that looks a bit better. And the thing is that I always end up fiddling with the stuff too much. Why I have to go over this now when it was already drying, I don't know. It's so silly. So as I'm doing it, I realize, so now I've got to, I wiped most of the water off my brush, and I'm just again going over the whole petal again. I keep forgetting. I sort of feel like I'm coloring with pencils or something. So there we go. Now I think I probably need to leave this to dry and then come back to do the rest, or maybe I can do the bottom leaf or whatever. So I'm going to do it in a couple of colors, starting with a green. The sketchbook, I like this little sketchbook. The paper is quite nice. I do find that it's perhaps just a fraction too small sometimes. But it's nice because it's small and it's not quite as intimidating as having this great big page that I need to fill. So, you know, great on the one side, and then on the other you sometimes want more space. I think it's time for me to do another landscape again one of these days. Now I'm using some blue, and it's a cobalt blue hue. The green was a mixture of Hooker's green, but I put a little bit of red in it to dull it down a little bit. So now I want these two to blend together, and I should really go over it more with the green than the blue, but I'm washing my brush off and drying it and then just trying to blend the two together. And so it's all ending up a bit blue, but never mind. It's a painting. It's not a reality show. It's like my version of the flower. Artistic license. There we go. Trying to get a bit more green in there. Also added a little bit of black into the green to darken it. So I didn't really want the stripiness. So again, I went in with too wet paint at the bottom of that and got a bit of a bloom. It's blooming marvelous, my whole painting. You can see the bloom on the left petal. I've left it though because in a way it's quite pretty. I mean, it is what it is. So me and my watercolor journey. So then I'm doing this here and going to go along here. I keep wondering if I should speed the video up, but I think it always looks so jerky. So now these two colors, you can see there's a bit of a purple forming where the red and the blue mix. So again, I've rinsed my brush and I've dried it off, and I'm sort of trying to blend them all together. But I don't want the green and blue to turn into grey. It's gone a little bit browny at the one side. But we're doing our best. Now I need to fill in the other two things. Are they stamens? Let me know in the comments. Do you know? Need to fill them in with blue. And meantime, I just decided I need to do a bit of shading here. So this is dried already, and so that doesn't then cause a bloom. So I'm going over it with a darker red. I've mixed the red with a little bit of green to darken it. And then I will need to rinse out my brush and dry it and blend it in. What is your favorite watercolor tool? My piece of paper towel. So I've added just a dash of yellow there to brighten the top bit up, and there we are. I quite like that. Again, over here I want to brighten this up, so another layer. This was completely dry now, so I'm just going over it again with the cadmium red hue, just getting it brighter. And so I think, let me know also in the comments when I do something like that, that it's glazing. Is that what glazing is? Giving it a second layer? I'm not quite sure. I would love to know. If you know about watercolors, let me know. It's kind of what I understand glazing to mean. They're such fascinating flowers, these, aren't they? I wonder where the name Bird of Paradise came from. I suspect because it looks like a bird. But now I'm using this Daler Rowney size 2 round brush. So I decided to do a little bit of research on the flower, and I discover, much to my surprise and delight, that it's actually a native to South Africa plant, first from KwaZulu-Natal, and it's been cultivated worldwide, and it's been naturalized in North, Central and South America, as well as Portugal, where it's now the national flower of Portugal. So that was a little bit of information and knowledge for you to add to your, what do they call it, to your store of facts that you can keep. So now I'm doing this blue bit. This particular paintbrush doesn't come to as great a point as I would like, but I'm doing my best. And I realize as I'm painting this that I forgot the little petal that's supposed to be next to the one on the left, so I'm going to have to wait for this blue one to dry before I get to that one. So I'm painting that, and then I need to paint this little bit in the middle. And I want this blue to be a little bit darker, and so I'm doing adding a little bit of black to it. I don't know if that's a cop-out, but I'm doing so, and just darkening it a little bit, because I just wanted to use this small palette. I didn't want to use loads and loads of colors. It's one of the great things for me about watercolors is that you don't actually need to have a huge set of watercolors. You can mix so many colors with just a few, and it's so much fun mixing watercolors. I must say I'd never really even thought of mixing them until I got that subscription box from Emma Lefebvre, and she sort of taught us a lot about mixing colors, and I really enjoyed that. So there, that's coming out, and now I need to do the next little middle bit. Let's see how we do there. I want that to be a nice bright blue, so I'm going to try using quite a thick mixture and really hope that it works. I just need to dip it off a little bit on the paper towel. It's looking too pale. I think I'm going to have to add more paint. Very fine and very small. There, that's now looking like what I want. I want all that thicker mixture in there, which is not really, I don't think, how you're supposed to paint with watercolors, but it's the actual, that's what I want it to look like, kind of really blue. So I suppose I could speed this up because I'm taking such a long time, but maybe it's also interesting for you to see that it's not foop foop 1 2, that one actually, if you're me, needs to take your time to get the finer lines and things. Let me know in the comments if you would have preferred me to speed it up, but I decided I'm going to leave this one in real time so you can actually see. There's a nice little project to do though, because you can finish it in an hour or so, or less than. Just the drying times in between that you've got to leave stuff to dry. So now I want to mix a darkish reddy orange for this other petal to go on the left. So I thought I'd actually bring my little palette so you can see. I'm going between the red and that I'm using a brown, an actual, I think it's, I'm not quite sure what color it is. I think it's burnt sienna that I'm using, mixing in there and then going back to that. And I just want it to be a nice rich color. I like the way this palette works in that the paints don't bead on it. It's actually quite a nice little beginner's palette. If you're looking for something, I'll link it in the info beneath the video in case you're interested, and I'll link the little sketchbook, the watercolor sketchbook. Now I'm using my silver brush, and that's my favorite brush, and that's got a point for you. And I'm finally getting the crisp edges that I wanted. I'm so grateful I've got these brushes. I kind of always, when I've got something that I like this much, I'm so scared something's going to happen to them because I don't have a backup. And they don't all seem to be, well, they are on Amazon, they're just terribly expensive. So I managed to get friends to bring these into me from the UK, so I didn't have to pay for all the postage and everything, and that made a big difference. I just need to put some sort of a dark color there to show that it's slightly behind. Just trying to get a good line. I'm using this darker red there and just going to try dotting that in. This is still damp, so it should blend together. But now, instead of leaving things, I've got to put some more, and that's now too much water, and it's going to push the pigment away. So now I'm washing my brush off, drying it off, and just pulling the paint all along. I really need to learn to let things be and give them their drying time. I think watercolor is very good for me. I think I'm basically very impatient. So now I'm just putting some of that brown there to see if that... Now you see that's not pushing the pigment because I didn't add a load of water. I used a slightly thicker consistency or thicker mixture. I read some book somewhere where they likened the mixtures or to wasabi paste and to cream and to this and to that and the other. So it really got me, but this was like thick cream. So I'm finished my bird of paradise, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to thank you for spending time with me and say goodbye. Have a great week. Bye-bye now.